Kia ora, folks, and very big welcome to Kaye. Lovely to have you with us. Hey, nice to see everyone. Good on you for coming in, team. And we've got a few people on the E who are travelling and all the rest of it. So, folks, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Kaye Parker here this morning. So, some of you, I'm sure, will have heard of or know a bit about Kaye, and others of you might not. But Kaye is truly a remarkable woman and a local legend. So she has done some pretty amazing things, and I'm going to tell you a tiny bit about her, and hopefully we'll hear from her about her journey as she goes through her words. It's a real privilege to have you here, Kaye, to speak to our senior leaders and other people who are joining us. It is an absolute delight. So thank you very much for being here. So Kaye's journey, having done a wee bit of research, Kaye started in advertising in Auckland and London. And then sometimes what people really know about Kaye is her work to establish and grow the medical research charity Cure Kids. And she was the chief fundraiser and chief executive until 2010. Is that right?
Yep, right about that.
And the organisation during that time, her time, funded more than $20 million of medical research for children with life-threatening illnesses in New Zealand and overseas. And then Queenstown was very fortunate because Kaye became the CEO of the Trails Trust. So I'm sure many of you use the Trails and certainly know about them, where when she came in, she helped lift the organisation's income a lot and raised a lot more money and made it the most successful not-for-profit organisation in the Wakatipu, and kind of was a big part of developing the Trails a lot to what they are now in the basin. And I love the Trails. I was just telling Kaye how much I love the Trails. They're a really important part of living here now for me. And then some of you might have seen Kaye in the papers and in the media because when COVID hit and when it first hit, so when it really first hit at the start of 2020 and the lockdown, and there were, remember, the migrant workers had to go home and there was no work and there was no support for lots of those people. Kaye and other people established the Wakatipu Greatest Needs Fund, and in 3 weeks raised over $400,000 to help those frontline charities who were supporting those people. And that was kind of really kicked off what I thought was a real sort of feeling in the basin and in the community around supporting people. And some of you will remember that as a challenging time. Certainly as a school, it was a really challenging time for us because we were kind of in the middle of that too, with families and students who were being very badly affected by what was happening. In 2013, Kaye was awarded a Queen's Service Medal for her services to tourism and children's health. Yeah, so a place that I worked outbound, some of you know that, like service was one of the most important values, and kind of Kaye embodies that in terms of serving other people and doing things for other people. So for me, I'm really looking forward to Kaye's words, and it is a real privilege to have you here, Kaye. So we'll put our hands together and we'll welcome Kaye Parker.
I have to say I was really daunted about coming and speaking because I know that you've been hearing from amazing leaders all around New Zealand, and I thought, but I'm not quite sure if I'm up to it, but thank you very much for those thoughts. And I know that we've got a short time and we've got hello anybody who's at Messi, I think, today, having a great time in Wellington. So I actually want to start first of all by giving a big shout out to all of you. All of you have stepped up to the plate at a young age and said, yes, I want to become a leader. And I think that's absolutely awesome and well done. Before I tell my story, I suppose, or my career path, and you've given a little bit of a hint of some of it, and I hope it's not too boring, I thought I'd just give you my simple philosophy on a leader, because I actually had to think about it. So I actually think a leader needs energy and passion. I think you must have a clear vision and communicate that to everybody. You need empathy and kindness. You should lead by example. And believe me, you're going to have to take some calculated risks, knowing that not all of them are going to come off, and you're going to make mistakes. Just admit them and fix them if you can, and carry on, because you will learn a lot from your mistakes. I also think you should keep asking and questioning your betters and people you admire. And very, very important, you should be humble and grateful to the people you lead, and absolutely tenacious and never give up if the vision's worth it. So the next thing I want to say before I get on to my quickly as much as I can get on to what I've done is since my mid-20s, I've had a really simple 5-step plan, so I can't even remember it, for accomplishing everything I've done, whether it's personally, running a business, running charities, it doesn't matter. And I thought I'd share that with you because I think people get awfully complicated. So here's my simple plan. What do you want to achieve? Know your objective or your vision from the start and write it down. Make a plan and do this next simple things. What, who, why, and how. What do you need to achieve the objective and why? Who do you need? Why do you need them? Question yourself. And how are you going to get them and make them say yes? I've said that about people because that's what I always need to get anything I've done. I've always needed people. So this is basically a business case and it's terribly simple. So always remember that things are far more simple than people try and tell you. So let me start my story by saying I would never have been considered a leadership position at my high school. I was a nobody in a nobody class, talking too much, bored a bit, disruptive and struggling to understand what I was being taught. Today, I would be diagnosed with mild dyslexia, dyspraxia, and perhaps a bit of mild ADHD, when really I now know that I am a visual learner. I just needed visual aids and to be taught by a passionate and encouraging teacher or teachers. So I want to tell you this because there will be lots of nobodies in this school. And if you and your encouragement could change their lives and make them feel so much better. So that sort of ethos comes through everything. So there's my nobody thing at school. But my dad raised money for the Salvation Army in his spare time. And I went everywhere with him until I was old enough to knock on people's doors and ask for money myself. I was so proud to tell people that the Salvation Army always helped people who needed it most and that its ethos was that they would never turn anybody away. By the time I was 15, I was in charge of whole suburbs for the annual appeal. I'd persuade people in the street to collect for their streets, and we'd all come and pick up the boxes, and we raised a lot of money that way. I was so touched by some of the stories of how a little bit at your hardest time, a little bit of help at your hardest time in your life can change your life and turn it around. I used to run a sweet stall in our driveway to raise more money, but it wasn't a big earner. So I asked my mum, who was a terrific baker, if we could make sponges and sell them. So my poor best friend who lived next door to me, I made her come with me down our long Coronation Road, Glenfield in Auckland, and knock on people's doors and take orders. Mum and I spent days and days and days making sponges, but we made loads of money for a good cause. So without realising it, I guess outside my school, I was learning valuable skills. I left school at 16, took secretarial jobs for the next 3 years, and a PA job to the CEO at an advertising agency changed my life. I finally felt at home. I found my tribe. This was a visual place and everything made sense. I observed how the agency worked, the tension between the off-the-wall fabulous creators, we used to call them genes in those days, who were never on time and on budgets, threw tantrums, and with dreadful at bunking off at work, then pulling all-nighters, which I'd have to stay with as well, but come up with incredible campaigns for our clients. The Suits' jobs was to try and control them and get the best creative campaigns out of them whilst looking after clients, understanding their business and helping grow their business and profit and make money at the same time. So my goal was to become a suit. That was my objective. Lowest role was junior account director. I got a lucky break because my CEO was moved down to Wellington. The next CEO wasn't coming for 6 weeks. And so I had a bit of time on my hands. We were doing the biggest pitch in our history, and we were one of the largest agencies, early 80s, I'm so old, Nissan cars, and it was for 6 million, which today is still a huge account. They were doing a rough cut of a television commercial, which in those days took forever and cost a lot of money. Never had we done a rough cut, or anyone done a rough cut for a pitch. And so I said to the account director, look, I've got time. Could I please help you? Account directors didn't have their own PAs in those days. He said, yes, you can be my temporary PA and gopher. It was fantastic and frantic. I got to go to all the meetings, and at one of the meetings, Gibby, the top creative director, said, "I need Joe Cockers, you are so beautiful," for the pitch. Oh my goodness. The account director turned to me and said, "Get Joe Cocker, the rights to Joe Cockers, you are so beautiful for the pitch." Long story short, we got it from America. Who knew that's what you did? You had to do things. And I still feel bad that we use such a beautiful song like that to sell cars. I worked day and night along with these amazing people, and we won the pitch. My new boss arrived, and the account director asked if I could be his junior account executive. He gave me my first break. He was just so amazing. I watched and kept listening and asking and writing down questions in meetings because I was too scared to make a fool of myself and ask in a meeting. These days I always ask the dumb questions because I learn a lot. So moving quickly on from those 20 wonderful years, most working as a strategy director new business for BBDO in London and in Auckland, I managed to persuade my London-born city slicker husband and 3 children to follow our best friends and move to Queenstown. I let my heart rule my head. No well thought out strategy there, no business plan. All the family settled well, and I joined the PTAs at the Queenstown Primary and at the Wakatipu. I was in charge of fundraising. It seemed to follow me wherever I went. Then I began to go, what next? Well, I was approached by 3 Queenstown businessmen, skiing fanatics, wanting to run an international ski race made up of gold medal winners from around the world. The event would showcase Queenstown skiing and raise funds for a charity called the Child Health Research Foundation, now known as Cure Kids, which funds medical research for kids with life-threatening illnesses. And they approached me in April 2000. They wanted to run the event in July 2000, 3 months. I knew they could pull off the event, but they didn't know that all the international companies that could sponsor such an event had all their international budgets signed off a year before. However, the vision to showcase, remember I always go with the vision or the objective to start, to showcase Queenstown internationally and raise funds was a good cause, and it was really worth a try. So I contacted my network of ex-clients and friends, thank God I always try and keep in touch, and persuaded them to give us a hearing. Long story short, we managed to get HP as the title sponsor. They helped us secure BMW and Philips, Air New Zealand, a core hotel group, joined the party. We were off and running. The charity CEO turned out to be one of my charity clients from my advertising days and asked if I'd be the face of the charity in Queenstown for the event. No, I thought, we need to get these kids who have these terrible illnesses and their parents to come down to be the face of the event, the face of the face of Cure Kids. He introduced me to Professor Bob Elliott, who's a New Zealand superstar. He's done world first breakthroughs into cystic fibrosis, type 1 diabetes. He is just amazing. He got the first 5 children, all suffering from life-threatening illnesses, and their parents to come down. I got a wonderful local nurse on board, and we went around. We were in charge of the charity. I said, look, I'll do the charity, you do the skiing. I'm a hopeless skier. And so we begged free accommodation, free airfares, food, petrol vouchers, whatever we needed, and all the local operators did a fabulous program for these sick children to the level that they could do, and we helped get option items for the fundraising dinner. The event was an outstanding success, but the real heroes who broke all our hearts were these wonderful, brave kids and their parents. 14-year-old Wanaka Becky, who had cystic fibrosis, so bravely stood up in front of everybody at the fundraising dinner and said how lucky she was because her life expectancy was now 30 years. She said 10 years previously when she was 4, she knew it was 10 years. With Cure Kids' help, it could be higher. Becky and I travelled around New Zealand together, her telling the story at so many places. And she's right, because right now there is a big fight going on with Pharmac to fund a drug that can now give many cystic fibrosis a nearly normal lifespan. Too late for Becky, who died 3 years ago, aged 34. She was like a second daughter to me, so I can get a little bit wobbly when I talk about that. That event raised $70,000 that first year, and by the 5th and final year, it raised $1.5 million to Cure Kids. I was asked to work part-time for the charity. My heart was broken by these kids and these parents. Okay, I live in Queenstown, offices in Auckland, but there are planes. I took over as CEO sometime after that event, and never in my life have I worried so much about getting the business case right and the strategy right. This wasn't just bums on seats for airlines or launching new cars. This was literally the difference between life and death, health and poor death for our precious New Zealand children. And unlike my advertising career, where companies had big budgets, there was no budget, just myself and a part-time office accounts person. But I spent 2 months ringing doctors and professors and telling them to speak plain English, because I'm not very good at big terms, and asked what they'd spent the grants that had already been given to them. And they started to tell me the most amazing things. One person was the world first, one doctor was the world first doctor who could take normal skin from people and grow it in the lab and put that over burns treatments. Another one found the gene responsible for all these deaths through the generations in a family. So we just had to find a way. And the strategy became obvious. I needed to get all those companies from the event along with their staff, which I figured out at that stage was a combination of about 800 to become my fundraisers. Research really resonated with them because their businesses lived and flourished with new product, improved product research and development. Cure Kids Key Partners was born. Every sponsor from that initial event became key partners, and they helped introduce me to other companies like Microsoft, Briscoe Group, Avis, just to name a few. The guidance and input from these key partners, CEOs and their smart teams was and is incredible to the charity to this day. Now, corporate events were things in those days. There were a few running events, but they're what we all did outside work hours. So, with the help of Southern Traverse chap down here, we developed the Cure Kids Great Adventure Race. Key partners and other companies were putting together teams of 4 against each other and their companies and having a hard multi-sport day out at in the Waitakere, Hunua Ranges and in Queenstown. And the whole purpose was they all had to raise money, and the big cup went to the ones not who won but who raised the most money. Wow, couldn't believe it. People told me, don't go to these CEOs and say, take the day off work and get, let all your staff go off work and go and help your charity. They said it'll never happen. On a Friday, a work day, I didn't listen. I decided it was a calculated risk. All of them said yes. And the companies couldn't believe it. Their CEOs were either competing or at the finish end. It was amazing. But what really changed everything was the briefing 3 days before, when one of our Cure Kids ambassadors would get up and thank them and give them some tips for when it really got hard. Becky, for instance, was despite her cystic fibrosis, she was a, what do you call the non-downhill skiers? Cross-country skier over at the ski farm, and she gave them some tips about how she tried to keep going with a lung disease. Somebody else told them about, well, here's how I do it. I'm up to my 8th chemo treatment. And then another one would say, I've been told that they can't do any more for me. And so this is how I cope. So most people had tears running around their faces, but boy, they said, we're going to do it for the kids. And it was wonderful to see a newbie corporate warrior completing this really hard challenge that they thought they couldn't do and being hugged by these ambassadors. It was amazing. We developed all these other well-known events, $10 challenge, Queenstown to Wellington on $10. Yes, some safe hitchhiking, some safe rules around all of that, and a party in Queenstown, but with those Cure Kids ambassadors at the heart of everything we did, because they were the ones that could inspire and raise money. So it was absolutely amazing, and we helped fund world first breakthroughs into cot death, cystic fibrosis, type 1 diabetes, childhood leukemia, and brain cancer for children, as well as many others. In 2009, I think it is, I've written down here, but it could have been 10, after 10 years at Cure Kids with an outstanding, dedicated staff of 7, 25 million in the bank and a fundraising strategy of $4 million per year, I knew it was time for a fresh pair of eyes and smarts and to lead it in new directions. So many weeks of those 10 years were spent outside Queenstown away from my family. I wasn't always there when my husband Michael and my 3 kids needed me, so they also gave up a lot to let me be the head of Cure Kids. Then along came an opportunity to be the part-time CEO for the Queenstown Trails Trust, helping fund walking and cycling trails for my community. Oh my gosh, my business case and vision stacked up. Part-time job, 24 hours a week, that's 2 days in my world. So involving cafes, walking and a little bit of fundraising. But unbeknown to me, damn it, I hope I'm allowed to say damn, 6 months later, the Prime Minister John Key had a marvellous rush of blood to the head and put up a 50 million competitive pitch to build cycle trails in beautiful parts of the country. Game on Queenstown, objective or vision, win the competitive pitch to become for Queenstown to become one of the rides chosen. We had 3 weeks to do a lot of work. We burnt some midnight oil, but in February we learned that we were one of them. Next issue, the route we'd chosen had a major geotech fault. Translation, it could fall into the river. We changed to an even more spectacular route, but unfortunately that was going to cost, instead of 3.5 million, 7 million. In those days, we only had 15,000 here. I started negotiating with 26 private landowners to get access over their land. Now, just to make you realise, and I've never done that before, and it was all legal stuff, so I had to learn, but just to make you all realise, what if I came to you today and said, or your parents, I'd like to put a trail at the bottom of your lawn and it's going to have around about 35,000 users a year. That's what I was asking for. There were no shortcuts, just long days, long hours, slowly gaining the people's trust and trying to imagine the vision. I learned new skills and did whatever it took to turn the vision into reality. It took 18 long months just to get the access easements, and we had to open the trail within 3 years. Short version, 2 years, 9 months later, the Prime Minister opened the 110, it was then, Queenstown Trail that cost 7.5 million. The government put in 2 million and we raised the rest from this small community of less than 15,000 residents then. We did events, we named bridges, desperate towards the end. I started asking people for 25,000 to name a hill after them. Thank you very much, Thompson's Hill, or Hell we call it, because that's the hard one, up along the Cowrail. And the whole community got behind this asset, behind this wonderful asset. Queenstown Trail is amazing. We all know that, and thank you for saying that. It has nearly 500,000 users a year, and Willie, the current CEO of the Trust, is so busy with council, putting in commuter connections. We've got fabulous ones now around Lake Hayes Estate, shot over country. They're connecting town to Milligan, and they're working on, particularly on, I've forgotten their new name, NZTA, from getting a Jack's Point down to Calvin Heights, not on the highway, off the highway. Halfway through it though, developing this trail, the competitive side of me came through and I thought the Queenstown Trail's great, but not enough to rival that wonderful trail network that they have in Europe. So there's 4 of us who are great rides in Central Otago. What was the vision? Connect the existing 366 Ks, Queenstown, Wanaka, Central, everywhere, and by building 177 Ks of new trail to make 500K in the most beautiful parts of Otago. That was the vision. The late Siri Onika, who we all miss so much, became patron of this new trail, and I got a 5-minute elevator pitch with John Key at the 2015 Winter Festival. We'd already costed the links a mere 26.3 million. My pitch, if we raise the first 13 million, would he take a presentation from us to match those funds? It was pretty unheard of in 2015 or any time that a charitable trust goes to government and says, we'll raise half the money first. So he questioned me and said, you mean you're going to raise the money before you come to me, Kaye? I said, yes, we are. And he said, yes, I'll take a meeting. Well, What he didn't know was a small group of 3 of us had already been working on this for 6 months, and we'd already done a presentation to the Central Lakes Trust and asked them for 13.15 million. They hadn't given their answer, but when I talked to him, but by September that year, they gave us the biggest grant in the history of 11 million and got the Community Trust of Otago to do the rest. So John Key got his phone, actually he said he only needed a phone call with us because he knew who we all were, and he agreed to match the funds. How many of you have done the Cromwell to Clyde Trail here? A couple of you? Fabulous. Well, that's part of it. That's part of it. And straight after this, I'm jumping on a plane to Auckland, and I'm going to see the last landowner, and I need legal access to his land down in Gippsland. Then we can start construction. You don't even know this. Nobody knows this. You're the first to know this. On the Cowrail Gorge, which will link that up, and then we're going to link up to Monica, and you're going to have 500 k's to walk and cycle off-road, and it's going to be absolutely wonderful. It's been a hard, long slog. We started this in January 2015, and there were so many obstacles on the way, but the vision is great, so it needs to be completed. Finally, very quickly, you've mentioned the Greatest Needs Fund, and I've been asked to tell you about this. It came about 5 days before COVID and lockdown, 19th of March 2020. We've all forgotten so much, I'm sure, because I forgot. I had to really look back and remember. I'd been out riding with a friend when I got my second phone call from my doctor saying she had a sick patient who couldn't work. His little family had no money for food, and because he was on a working visa, he wasn't entitled to anything. I'd retired from fundraising by that stage, but it sounded as if our Queenstown was going to hurt. I rang Mayor Jim Bolt, who confirmed that the council was pulling together all the social agencies. There was little coming out of government, and anything I could do would be great. Goal: help Queenstown Social Services look after our most vulnerable and fill in the gaps of government funding once we knew what they were. And I thought a sensible goal, because we're all going to be in lockdown and none of us knew what that looked like, 250,000 would be a good goal. Within 3 hours of my first phone call, Hugo Charitable Trust came back to me and said, yes, they'd pledged 25,000 and another 25,000 if I reached the goal, but because they're really tough on me because they know I can fundraise, I had to get 4 more pledges before lockdown. I had 4 days at that stage to do it. Next phone call to Suri Yongeka and Tony McQuilkin, experienced chairman of Charitable Trust, work fast, generous, and I'd worked with both of them before. Please get a capable granting committee together. Wakatipu Foundation, Community Foundation CEO and Chairman Jennifer Belmont and Ray Key said yes, they'd run the funds through the charity, and Ray became the chairman. And then the next day, I met with Suri Oneka and Tony and their wives, and I had to say to them both, I've got to ask you each for $25,000, thinking this is really and I need it pledged today. And without hesitation, both of them said yes. I told them our town was in trouble and what Jim had told me. So by my other phone calls to people I'd known, I had 125,000 committed before. Then the hard work started. It's Suri Oneka's little black book. Sat in my room, hated that the most, with a mobile and a laptop. But everybody answered my calls. Husbands and wives were together. Nobody was doing anything, and I had their whole attention. This town is amazing. Hardly anyone said no to a donation, not those big ones. But I got so surprised. One person, I didn't know how much, here's $20,000 sitting in the bank the next time. And I rang them, I said, oh my gosh, thank you so much. She said, Queenstown's been good to me. And they all said yes. And the few that said no said, look, we are really stretched helping our staff or our family financially because so many people had lost their jobs. We launched, as you said, on TV1 News on Thursday, the 23rd of April with 427. We raised over 1.2 million in the end, and all the major charitable trusts got grants, 24 in total, and since then a lot more. St John's Ambulance needed their garage doors placing. Everybody had something. The high school here, everybody got a hardship grant, free GP visits, prescriptions and mental health therapy, and even life-saving operations we've funded for those migrants who aren't able to have them. And those GP and mental health funds for people who can't afford it continue today. So same simple strategy from me every time. In closing, believe me, I want to say to you, it's the wonderful trustees I've had, the chairman, that first account director who took a chance on me. It's everyone else who works tirelessly behind the scenes, who take my phone calls, who give me advice, open the doors, do the accounts, find my handbag because I always lose everything, and say yes if they could make a donation, large or small, or just encourage me with a kind word or a long black. They enable the results. They are my heroes, and I will never stop thanking them. And in closing, I just want to say, as you lead through your life, always remember those people are what enable you to lead and inspire people to do great things, hopefully. So thank you.
That is a great story. Like I really enjoyed that. I love that. I love the way you started when you were young. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's really interesting for you folks. Like you could take it right back to when you were at school and out there raising money for the Sallies and all the rest of it. That is such a cool story. Yeah, I've got some more comments, but I'm going to hand it over to these folks. So a chance to ask questions. You know, you can see Kaye is an enthusiastic, passionate woman, and I'm sure she will give you, as she's been very frank, give you honest answers to any questions. Great opportunity to ask someone, you know, who's pretty interesting. Ask the questions. Where you go, Jess? You look like you've got a question primed, have you?
Hey.
No, so I was thinking, yes, here. I thought, right. But any questions, folks? Yep.
Okay. What would your biggest hurdle be like?
What was, sorry?
Something that you found the most trouble with that you've had to overcome, not necessarily on your own,
Speaking in front of people. Because I had to learn to do that when I was in advertising, and I would go bright red, and my eyes are going really squeaky. And the only way to this day that I can do that is writing my speech. Normally I'd learn it, but I'm old now, so I decided you wouldn't mind if I read it. So speaking in front of people, or that's probably my hardest thing, with big groups. And all I did was overcome it because I had to do it again and again and again. Practice makes perfect. Oh, lots of things actually. No, there's lots of things. I see, this is terrible. No one will ever employ me again now because I see figures around the wrong way. So I raise money for charities. So the figures are really hard for me. I have to look at them all the time, and I have to work with accounts people and make sure I'm saying, oh, we've got 2 million, or it's around the wrong way. So that's also been really hard, and I use a calculator for everything. So I think that's just nervousness, and when I make mistakes, I feel so dreadful. I've learned along the way, mistakes teach you the best thing. You just have to own up quickly. I can't tell. That's probably the biggest thing. At school, everywhere, if you make a big mistake, just own up, because you're going to feel sick about it anyway. Half the time you never mean to. And then you find wonderful people like your principal over here. You think they're going to go mad, and actually they know how to fix it because they've had many more years of experience.
My question was just have you had experience with people being just hard to?
Yes.
How did you?
I've only told you the good stuff. Yes. So I've had so many no's in my life, and no's sometimes that I was quite surprised with. But when I'm raising money or doing something for others, and also in my advertising days, you learn to just brush it off. Like, we used to come away from some pitches and we would have lost. And then we hear, and we were going, yes, we did such a great job because we're on this, sleep deprived stage because we'd worked all night on every pitch. We'd always worked all night. And then we think, I think we did it. And then somebody else got the pitch. And you just have to, they won. You just have to take everything and just go, right, okay, what could we have done better? Oh, okay, yeah, oh, well, I knew that I'd mucked up there. Oh, okay. We'd often try and go back and ask why we lost, just to improve and to learn. And also then with people saying no, it means nothing to me. And I thank them for their time, because you never know what's going on. And I'm just on to the next people. You have to let it go. Let all of those things go. Just get on to something else, because that's the best thing. Otherwise, your job or whatever you're doing, even studying for your exams, just learn, but then let it go, and then whatever the outcome is, it is, and go on from there. I'm not very good at these on the cuff things.
No, you're doing just fine.
So personally, one of the hardest questions on application to answer for me is one about role models. So who would your biggest role model be, and for what reasons?
I've got many. I'll give you two. Becky, darling Becky, taught me so much in that she was never sorry for herself. We used to share a hotel room, and in the middle of the night she'd be coughing so much she would vomit, and I'd be lying there, she's a teenager now, and finally I'd say, Becky, are you all right, darling? And she'd go, yes. And then she was doing that in her sleep. She would then get up and go, and I'd say, are you well enough to speak today? And everything she did, she knew she had short time, and she would come and smile to all of us. She'd get up on the stage, she'd do everything. She lived life to the full. And I went over and saw her, not knowing that it was going to be 3 days before she died. She was living in Australia by then. And she was this tiny little girl. And she said, oh, I've only just given up. I was so upset. I've had to give up my job on Tuesday. It was too much. And so Becky, her resilience and love, that's at one end, is probably the person I most admire and love, and many of the others, but her particularly. And then the other person is Sir Ian Edgar. Sir Ian Edgar taught me so many things. He's been a marvellous mentor to me. And he used to say things that I thought sounded good. One thing that he used to say, he'd say, I love having people owe me favours. And I thought, oh. And then when I said to him one day, I said, that kind of sounds a bit, I don't know. And he said, oh, okay, what I mean is I will have done something that they needed. And he said, and then they'll come and help me when I've got all my big projects. Like, you want money? Well, you tell them that I've told you to ring them. And the power of Sir Ian Edgar said I should ring you is amazing. So there's two, but I love that he didn't need to. He came here from Dunedin. And he loved Queenstown as much as everybody who comes here and loves it so much. He did so much for our community. And yes, he had the money, but that's not the thing. He did the time. I could ring him at 6, anytime from 6 in the morning onwards, because both of us were up and working. And and no matter what, he just gave his time to everybody. He saw anybody who asked to see him. He might too. You could have other role models, though. If you haven't got people you know personally, there might be people that you admire, who you know about, famous people.
I feel like lots of the sort of new things that you moved on to, you were doing it because you met a person who gave you a chance and saw something in you. Was that kind of because you'd took them aside and really chatted to them and sort of showed them your vision, or was that kind of just a lot of chance? Has it been who you know or what you know?
Certainly no chance at the beginning in the advertising one, just to me. Well, I do chat. I do talk too much. So I do chat and I work hard. So in my early days of advertising, I took the chance to tell the account director I wasn't busy, thinking, and also I was bored, so I always wanted to help people. I suppose I always wanted to help people. And then those other ones, the Cure Kids one, they came to me because they heard that I was from advertising, and I later discovered that the actual CEO had said, oh, you've got to ask Kaye Parker, she lives in Queenstown, now she'll know, she'll be able to help you with this. So that was another lucky, but I guess each time you've got to sell yourself. So each time, and it's not to be up yourself either. You must always have a sort of a humble attitude of why the heck would they ever take me on. So once you start with that, like, this is crazy, you do need to do your best and don't think about yourself, think about the qualities you've got though that might help them do their job better, or help them do this event or whatever it is. If you wanted to get a spot as a leader on something at school, what's the things that you could bring to it, not what they could do for you. So I think that's always think about the vision, the people, the person, and try and think of skills that you have, and then try and persuade them. And you get better at it the more you practice. And now I'm shameless. I'm shameless in the Greatest Needs Fund, because if it's for my community or for a good cause, I can be shameless.
Thank you.
And also give a sense of urgency. That's my another thing. Everything I do, it's urgent. I remember at the Trails Trust, somebody said to me when I got off the phone trying to persuade someone to give me money, and she said, look at all, and she had worked with me at Cure Kids, and she said, it almost sounds as if kids are going to die if we don't give money for gravel trails. So there's always a sense of urgency, and there is always urgency with me because I say yes to too many people, and that's another fault, but if that's a fault, should be. So I am always rushing. That is a bad fault. I'll be late for every class for a good reason.
What advice would you have for people our age that want to get more involved in their community but just don't even know where to start?
I would, so in your community, I would think about things that you might be passionate about, that you would love to be part of, things you even know. So for instance, if you love downhill cycling, go up on the gondolas and everything, you might want to try and get on as a youngest person at the mountain club. If you love to help people, you might be able to say, well, I think I could volunteer my time, go and look at these places. Don't tell them check out that it's something you want to do. Or talk to somebody like me. I know all the charities in town, if that's what you wanted to do, but have you got time at your age and stage, or are there events you'd like to work at? That's a wildest way. The Queenstown Marathon, that gives $10 to everybody who enters, $10 that goes back to the cycle trail. So don't ever be afraid, and that's what you should do with everything you want to do. Think about the people who can help you and make a phone call, or ask people to find those people and make a phone call. And you can now say to anybody, oh, you can ring me up at any time, because you can say, oh, you talked at the school and I can't say no to you. So that's how it works. And really, adults love to help young people do what they want to do, and give them a helping hand, I believe. And I think most people want to help people. Great, I talk fast.
We're pretty good on time, actually. And unless anyone else has got any burning questions, we might actually throw to Alex, who is going to say a word or two. Alex, over to you.
This is the second time I've heard you speak. I came to I was in Generation Z.
You were?
Yes, and it was just as inspiring the second time around. Hearing about all the incredible things that you've managed to do through your life, like both for the Queenstown community and the New Zealand community, and even like worldwide, is just incredible. And the people, skills, and the connections, that like the importance around those that you've talked about, I think are skills that we as young leaders and people going into the next stage of their lives will really find really useful and will carry through with us. So thank you so much for talking to us today. And another big round of applause to Kaye.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah, Kaye, well, thank you very much. It's a delight actually to hear you speak. It's really nice. Amazing messages and amazing story for these young people. So I'm just so pleased that you came along. Thank you very, very much. It's a real privilege to have had you here. And I kind of admire your work greatly, as many people in town do. Clearly, I'm following on some of your coattails now,
Yes.
which is a
The
delight.
Trials Trust.
So is Elisa's dad.
Oh, great. This is fantastic. It's the best thing ever. Who knew travel? Who knew gravel could be so interesting, eh?
It's the best. Yeah, but good on you for coming along. Have a good day, everybody, and thanks so much, Kaye. One last round for Kaye.
Off to Auckland.